This is my first video update coming to you from Athens, Greece. I am here in central Athens. Sindangma Square is right behind me. The X95, if anyone is staying in Athens and they need to get to the airport, this is the X95, the bus that takes you directly to Athens International Airport. This is where you pick up that X95 bus. So, let's talk about some news on this Wednesday morning. A story broke yesterday evening in the United States with regards to Twitter, and I thought I would just touch upon this story real quickly. And it has to do with this general counsel, former FBI guy, Baker, James Baker, general counsel at Twitter. And he was a former FBI guy, and he was one of the guys that cooked up the whole Russiagate thing. Actually, I think he was the FBI agent that went after Flynn. And interestingly enough, 5 months after, or 5 months before the election, I hope I get this right, I believe 5 or 6 months before the 2020 election, and when Russiagate and Ukrainegate was kind of wrapped up, the bogus investigation and the bogus impeachments of all of Russiagate and Ukrainegate against Trump, when all of that stuff was kind of wrapped up, and 5-6 months before the election, Baker went to Twitter, and he was named general counsel for Twitter. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting how that works? The FBI sends this guy. Okay, he's former FBI, but this guy ends up at Twitter just a few months before the elections in the United States. Anyway, no collusion or corruption going on there, folks. But they came to light yesterday that there was supposed to be another dump of the Twitter files a couple of days ago, but there was no second dump of the Twitter files. And the reason for this is because Matt Taibbi, he discovered, along with, I think he's working with Barry Weiss, who was formerly with the New York Times. She was a New York Times reporter, but now I also think she's an independent journalist. Anyway, they're working together, kind of curating the Twitter files and all these documents. Well, he noticed that some files seem to be missing. Some very important documentation seems to be missing. Most of it connected to the FBI and their role in censorship and the Hunter laptop and all of these things. Anyway, long story short, Elon Musk fired Baker because it came to light that Baker, who's still at Twitter, was still at Twitter, as the Twitter files are getting released with regards to the Hunter laptop, that he was actually vetting the documents and removing any documents that involved his name or the FBI or anything like that before they went to Matt Taibbi, so then he could further curate the files and get them out there to the public. And Elon Musk had no idea that this was going on. Matt Taibbi kind of spotted this. Him and Barry Weiss noticed that there appears to be some important documents related to the FBI and their involvement in the Hunter Biden laptop. And these documents aren't here. What's going on? And I guess Musk was notified, and they found out that Baker was removing documents and doing his own curation of the documents so as to not implicate himself and the FBI. Anyway, he's been fired from Twitter. Musk tweeted the announcement of his termination as well, and wow, what a development. What a development. So much corruption, man. So much corruption. It's quite staggering, the amount of corruption. As far as Baker is concerned, well, he's been fired from Twitter, but my thought on Baker is that he is going to get a big reward, a big bonus from the deep state for a job well done. That is what awaits Baker. He's going to probably have a book deal. Actually, I imagine the book is already written for him. He just has to slap his name on it. He's going to have a nice book ready and waiting. He's going to get an upfront payment from one of the publishing houses for that book deal. No one's going to buy the book, but the New York Times is going to say that it's a bestseller. He'll make his some upfront cash there, and then the deep state is going to make sure that he's given some sort of paid commentator job at MSNBC or CNN or something like that, or worst case scenario, they give him a six-figure income job at some DC think tank. Job well done. Job well done for Baker with regards to Russiagate and going after Flynn. Job well done with the elections, the Hunter Biden laptop, and all of that stuff, and the job well done at Twitter. That is what awaits Baker. That is what's going to await him. So I don't think Baker's upset or sweating one damn thing. I'm sure he understands that his big payday now is coming. And don't be surprised if he doesn't show up on one of those many windows on CNN discussing how evil Trump or DeSantis or whoever, I don't know, whoever it is, or Putin or whatever, he's gonna pop up there too. Or Musk, how evil Musk is. He'll be there. That's for sure. Anyway, I just thought I would talk about that story. And now let's get to some more news. And let's talk about another story from the Wall Street Journal that came out the other day. And in this article from the Wall Street Journal, they're citing anonymous sources which claim that HIMARS rocket launchers in Ukraine received from Washington have been secretly modified so they can't use longer range missiles, even if Kiev obtained them from elsewhere. This is according to the Wall Street Journal, citing anonymous U.S. officials. I think this is kind of an admission from the Wall Street Journal that there absolutely are forces in the Pentagon that are pushing to provide Ukraine with weapons that want to strike deep inside of Russian territory. Keep in mind that this article was released on Monday, the very same day that you had this drone strike deep inside of Russian territory, 2 drone attacks on 2 airfields deep inside of Russian territory. One airfield, the Engels airfield, is one of the most important, if not the most important, airfield in Russia. So on the same day that you have a strike deep inside of Russian territory, you have the Wall Street Journal running with an article saying that there are forces inside of the Pentagon, anonymous sources, saying that the U.S. is not arming Ukraine with HIMARS that are capable of striking inside of the Russian Federation. And it is an absolute admission that, yes, you do have factions inside of the Pentagon that are kind of fighting it out as to what weapons and what capabilities they're going to provide the Ukraine military. But it also shows that the very fact that you had to make software and hardware updates to the HIMARS before providing them to Ukraine is proof that if you didn't make these modifications and these software updates, the forces that want to provide Ukraine with the ability to strike deep inside of Russian territory would have done just that. They would have provided Ukraine with the HIMARS to strike the Russian Federation. The fact that the Wall Street Journal is admitting that there are factions in DC that have to make these adjustments is proof of the fact that there are forces in DC that are pushing very, very hard to give Ukraine these long-range striking capabilities. And the other thing that this article does, and Alexander mentioned this in a video that's going to go up today on the Duran, another thing that this article kind of does is that it distracts attention away from the U.S. so that the U.S. can say, we're on record as to not providing HIMARS with with what they need to hit deep inside of Russia. But what the U.S. could easily do, what the Pentagon could do, is HIMARS can be supplied by their EU NATO allies without the software and the hardware adjustments. And that can easily be done. It removes the blame of the United States. It removes blame from the United States if HIMARS do manage to hit, say, deep inside, I don't know, hypothetically speaking, say HIMARS managed to strike inside Crimea. Well, the U.S. can come out and say, we're not at fault. You see, we're making software and hardware modifications, while at the same time, those HIMARS could have been supplied by Poland, Romania, I don't know, UK, Canada, whatever, without the software and the hardware modifications. So the Russian military should not look at this Wall Street Journal article and think, okay, we can rest easy. The U.S. is not going to be allowing those HIMARS to travel long distances. No way. The Pentagon can easily give these weapon systems to a partner, and that partner, they don't have to do any of these software or hardware modifications. They won't have this stuff, these modifications on the HIMARS anyway. So that Wall Street Journal article came out the very same day that you had these drone strikes inside of Russia, and on the same day, you had Anthony Blinken speaking at a Wall Street Journal event. And he was asked about Ukraine and the U.S.'s funding of the Zelensky regime and how far the U.S. is willing to support the Zelensky regime in this conflict. And Anthony Blinken, what did I say? Blinking? Anthony Blinken speaking at this event in the Wall Street Journal. Keep in mind, this is all happening after the missile strike inside of Russia. Speaking at this Wall Street Journal summit event, he said that the U.S. would continue to arm Ukraine and bankroll its economy until it could take back territory that's been seized from it since February 24th. He was asked if this was, and I quote, really realistic from a journalist to think that Ukraine could capture Crimea. Blinken did not answer directly. Instead, he said, fundamentally, Ukrainians are making the decision about where they want to go, when they want to get there, and how they want to do it. We all know that Ukraine is not making the decisions. We all know that the U.S. is making the decisions. Just the other day, Biden and Macron were meeting in D.C., deciding on whether it was the right time to negotiate with Russia. Ukraine was not present at these meetings. But anyway, I find it interesting that once again, on the very same day that you have this drone strike inside of Russia, Blinken is asked about this drone strike, and his response is that the U.S. is in it until Ukraine gains back Zaporozhye, Kherson, Donbass, Crimea. A reporter asked about Crimea as well. That is the extent to which Blinken is on record saying that the U.S. is going to go for Ukraine. They are going to arm them until they take back territory lost since February 24th. And it was also implied via a reporter's question that they are also discussing Crimea as well. So Blinken then moved on to a press conference with the Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, and they were meeting with Australian counterparts in DC, and they gave a press conference. Once again, Ukraine was top of the agenda. Once again, they were asking Blinken and Austin about these drone strikes inside of Russian territory. And this is what Blinken said when he was asked about these drone strikes. He said, "We have neither encouraged nor enabled the Ukrainians to strike inside of Russia." He then added that what really matters is how Ukraine is coping with ongoing Russian aggression. The U.S. is determined to give the Ukrainians the equipment that they need to defend themselves, to defend their territory, to defend their freedom. So in this instance, when he was asked about whether Victoria Nuland, who officially is the Undersecretary of State, so she works for Blinken, so they were basically saying that Victoria Nuland, the reporters are kind of hinting at the fact that, look, Blinken, Victoria Nuland was in Kiev. She met with Zelensky. She spent the night at Zelensky's palace. And on Monday morning, you have drones striking into Russian territory. What is going on here? She is, after all, your employee. I personally think that Victoria Nuland is on top of Blinken, but anyway, officially, Victoria Nuland works for Blinken, and it's interesting to see that Blinken says we have neither encouraged nor enabled the Ukrainians to strike inside of Russia. It's not a denial. It's not a denial. He is not saying under any circumstances there is no chance that my employee Nuland was in Kiev and gave the green light to Zelensky to launch those drones. That's not what he's saying. He's saying we're not telling them to do it and we're not telling them to not do it. So you're not getting a denial from the State Department with regards to whether they green-lit the drone attack inside of Russia. I think it's fairly safe to conclude that the neocons are absolutely diligently working to escalate and to provide Ukraine with the means to strike inside of Russian territory. I think that is the one conclusion that you can get from all of these statements. Now let's move on to Hungary. Two stories connected to Hungary, and one of those stories is actually a clown world. So Hungary, this is pre-clown world story connected to Hungary. So Hungary is on record now saying that they are not going to take part in any of the training with regards to Ukraine soldiers. So we're getting these stories now that all of these EU member states are now going to be setting up training facilities for Ukraine soldiers, Ukraine recruits. And if you believe that these training facilities are going to be staffed with only Ukraine recruits, conscripts, and they're not going to be staffed with NATO soldiers or mercenaries who are also going to be taking part in this training, and then given Ukraine uniforms to enter the war, well then I've got an Athens city Christmas tree to sell you, because in my opinion, I think that's exactly what is going to happen. I believe, and this is just my opinion, but I believe that all of these EU member states that are now taking part in this EU member-wide training program of Ukraine recruits, I believe that a good chunk of those people that are going to be suited up, trained and suited up, and then sent to Ukraine, I believe you're going to be looking at mercenary and NATO soldiers as well. That's just my hunch. Anyway, Hungary has now come out on record and they have said that they are not going to be participating in this training program. They're not going to do it. So I think Hungary understands that, look, Russia knows what's happening at these training facilities. They understand what the EU, what NATO, what they're doing. And if we take part in this, well, then Russia is then going to view us as a hostile actor. In general, there is a push to train and mobilize, whether it's inside Ukraine, whether it's in the European Union. And all that tells me is that Ukraine and the EU and the US and all the stories that I said that I was talking about with the HIMARS and all of that stuff, it just means that the overall plan is indeed to extend and prolong this war for as long as it takes. That is the overall plan of things. Hungary is not going to be training troops. That's a good sign, but the rest of the EU, well, all the other EU member states, they are now putting together training facilities to get some sort of big mobilization underway. That is what this is looking like to me. 10,000 troops being trained in all kinds of EU member states. A mobilization now is taking place, allegedly. Some sort of mobilization may be taking place in Kharkov and Slavyansk and these areas as well. And it just signals that Ukraine is trying to make another push to put together more forces to keep this conflict going. Anyway, let's do a clown world now, and we are going to stay with Hungary. And in this clown world, we have reports that Hungary is postponing this $18 billion to Ukraine that the EU is putting together, $18 billion or 18 billion euros, whatever the amount. Hungary is now blocking this initiative to send this money to Ukraine, and this 18 billion is going to the Zelensky regime. This is 18 billion that is going to be paid to Ukraine from the European Union. It's going to be loaned. The EU is going to loan this money to the Zelensky regime so that the Zelensky regime can continue to pay salaries and pay the administration and the wages of the parliament people and all of this thing, the MPs. This money is just basically to keep the Zelensky government afloat. And Hungary is blocking this payment of this 18 billion. Now, the EU is blocking a payment to Hungary of $7.9 billion, which is money that is owed to Hungary from the lockdown, the KUF funds. And the EU is not paying Hungary that 8 billion because it is saying that Hungary is not being neoliberal, globalist enough for the EU's liking. So the fact that Hungary doesn't turn into this neoliberal, globalist cesspool that the EU wants it to become, they're holding back this 8 billion to Orban. And now Orban is saying, well, two can play at that game. I'm going to block the 18 billion that you want to pay out to Zelensky and his government, his administration. Now, that's not the clown world in all of this. The clown world is that according to Bloomberg and Euronews, this money that the EU is going to be loaning to Ukraine is actually money that the European Union is going to take a loan out for. The EU, in other words, is going to go into debt so that they can then give a loan to Zelensky. According to Bloomberg, the EU would borrow the money on global markets and Ukraine would repay the 18 billion over 35 years, with the EU covering the interest payments. Oh, wow. Wow. So this is kind of like, what is it like? It's like, I don't even know what it's like. Could you say this is something akin to me taking out a new credit card so that I can then use that new credit card to pay off the debts of an old credit card? But in that case, I'm going to still have to pay the interest. So, I mean, this is just incredible. This is absolutely incredible how the European Union is managing their funds, or the funds that they don't have. They're going to take out a loan, they're going to cover the interest, and then they're going to loan it out to Zelensky over 35 years. Like Zelensky is going to pay back, the Ukraine is going to pay back this loan to the EU in the next 35 years. And this is money that the EU is also taking out a loan on. Wow. Incredible. Anyway, that is the video, everybody. TheDuran.locals.com. We are also on Rockfin, and go to the Duran shop. 10% off. Use the code. Good day. Take care.